There's one part about Cypher that I think too many people either forget about or sometimes don't even know exists in the first place, and that's character arcs. Considering the book states that almost half of your total XP generation as a player should be from character arcs, the fact that this part of the system is so often forgotten is kind of a big deal. The first time you see character arcs in the Cypher System Rulebook Revised Edition is on page 15 in the little box that outlines the steps for character creation. One of the character creation steps is to choose a character arc from chapter 12. It also gives examples of choosing character arcs before this in the character types to show what sort of things you may want to consider. In chapter 12 on page 238 is where we start to get more detailed information about character arcs. So, what are they? A character arc is a special storyline a player aims for their character to go down. For those coming from other RPG systems, I guess you can kind of think of it like granting yourself your own personal quest line right at character creation to layer on top of whatever plots the GM has created. Although I am hesitant to use the term quest line, you'll see why at the end of the video. Sure, you could say that you could do this in any game with little backstory, but Cypher actually has a list of predefined arcs for you, although you can still make your own of course, and has a mechanical structure to the way that they work in the actual rules, so that as you progress through them, it's another means of experience generation. You gain your first character arc when your character is first created. It's one of the things you should be choosing, alongside your type, descriptor, focus, flavor, etc. It is considered just as important, at least in multi-session games where long-term experience generation matters, not like one-shots or just like 1 or 2 sessions. When you complete a character arc, either successfully or unsuccessfully, or if you decide to drop a character arc and take up a new one, it will cost you 1 experience point and involve some sort of in-story triggering event to begin along that path. There's no limit to how many character arcs you can have at one time, although honestly, if you have more than just a few of them, then the story arcs they help generate become muddled and confusing, so it's suggested to keep that number low. The reason it costs experience to gain something that generates experience is to show devotion to the arc and its goal. And frankly, even if you fail a character arc, it will still generate many times more experience than it costs. The character arc system is meant to be a way for players to help guide parts of the narrative that are particular to their characters over time. The book says this system is entirely player-driven and not for the GM. But frankly, the way it's set up, it is kind of a handy framework for those times when the GM may have a particular group story arc in mind. Just don't rely on it too much as the GM, or you will likely have an avenue where you're granting a little more experience than intended. However, generally, this is a player-driven part of the system. They should be the ones to choose a character arc, manage details about it, and at the end of each session discuss with the GM if they think they've made any progress along the character arc. As players drive these personal storylines along, they should keep in mind that character arcs are meant to be long-form content with multiple, possibly complex steps. It's not something you should be able to complete in just a couple of sessions. Character arcs are split into various parts, although they can vary in length. Firstly, a character arc has an opening. This is the trigger that starts the whole thing and does not generate any experience itself. This is usually an event or series of actions that leads to the arc opening up. As mentioned, your first character arc is free, so you've already done this opening before the game even starts. If this is not your first one for that character, then this is the part where you would also pay the 1 experience to start the arc. Secondly, are the steps. This is where the bulk of the character arc takes place. The character arcs in the books gives examples of steps for each arc, although many of them have a variable amount of steps. The same character arc could be taken multiple times, or across multiple characters and have a different amount of steps each time. Basically, the steps are just the individual points of progress a character makes along the way, with each step usually granting about 2 experience. Climax. This is the big part. This is the final step that determines if you succeed or fail. Getting justice, raising a child to adulthood, joining a special organization, or whatever sort of arc you're on. There's even a character arc in the book where you are expected to fail. I'll leave it for you to discover which one that is. If you succeed, you gain a whopping 4 experience. If you fail, you still gain 2 experience as if it was a step. Finally, we come to the resolution. This part usually only happens if you succeed on the character arc, but I could see times where a resolution could still happen on a failure as well. The resolution is like the final step to tidy things up, for your character to think about the conclusion of the arc itself. One final note on the structure of the character arc is that even with ones given in the book, all parts could be optional depending on the situation. It is Cypher, after all, where rulings over rules is the name of the game. As I always say, in my games I encourage my players to haggle with me on the details. If they can convince me it is so, then it is so. I'm obviously not going to list all of the example character arcs here. You can find them in the rulebook from pages 242 to 250. They give everything you really need for them: a description, the opening, example steps, climax, and resolution. And frankly, there's some character arcs in here that you may not even have thought of bringing a character down. Think of starting a sci-fi horror campaign with the Recover from Wound or Trauma arc and begin the character with them having just shattered their leg before the first scene even happens. Or how about a post-apocalyptic campaign with the Birth character arc, where your character, or maybe a follower that's the character's romantic partner, starts by having just found out they're pregnant. That of course would be a whole can of worms and easily leads to other character arcs like Raise a Child, assuming you succeed of course. In conclusion, character arcs are not just some random quest thrown upon you. That's why I'm hesitant to describe them with the term quest. They can be a great way to shape your character's actions, personality, and even the theme of who they are. These are storylines that not only shape your character, but allow the players to express their own creativity and storylines in the game using the Cypher system. I hope this taught you a little bit about this wonderful aspect of the system itself. I think it's overlooked in far too many games, considering as of the revised rulebook, it's just as central to character creation as choosing your type, focus, and descriptor, and is currently supposed to be one of the driving forces for XP generation for players. So yeah, character arcs, use them, and love them. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a good one, eh?